Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Corina and today is Money Monday. Today I want to talk to you guys about the #1 income priority, which is covering your four walls Dave Ramsey style. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay friends, so if you have read either the Total Money Makeover, if you've attended Financial Peace University, or if you've read the Financial Peace book, or listened to any of Dave's podcasts, you have heard him talk about your four walls when it comes to building your budget. Now your four walls are the basic necessities that you need in order to live. In order for your family to function and survive, you need to have these four bases covered. Now, something that comes up quite often is a little bit of confusion as far as when people are in the baby steps and what an income priority should be. Now, if you've listened to Dave, you know that taking care of your four walls is absolutely #1. Doesn't matter what baby step you're on, doesn't matter how much debt you have or who you owe money to, covering your four walls is the most important step in building your budget. And that's because your four walls are where you live and it's how you get to work or to school for your kids in order to make your income. So you have to have these four walls covered in order to survive. It's just basic functional survival. But today I want to share with you guys how we cover our four walls and also how we break up the four wall categories. Because there are four different walls in this category, it's important to understand that there are different funds that are necessary and different pieces that go into covering your four walls. So the first wall that we cover is food, which is basic groceries. It's not dining out, it's not planning for your kid to buy lunch at school. It is literally going to the grocery store and purchasing food that you make at home and send with your kid to lunch, to school for lunch every day. So it's covering that basis is #1. You have to make sure that you have food. So what we do, and one way to make this a good part of your budget and make sure that you're budgeting for this category well, is to build your budget around a grocery meal plan. So what I do each week is I sit down, I figure out which meals our family likes to eat, what are things that we enjoy eating first and foremost, and what also is in season or might be on sale. I'm not a huge couponer or a huge like sale advertisement person. So I really just go based on things that are inexpensive that I know we like, and meals that work and that are easy for me to make and prepare for our family for the week. So I put together a meal plan every week and then we go to the grocery store. Now we have a set budget per week because that just is what works for us. We don't have much space to store food, so we shop every week. But within that budget, we get things for breakfast, we get things for lunches, we get things for dinners, and then we have some snacks as well because you need some snacks every now and then. Now, we also do have like a date category, which includes a little bit of eating out, and also a pizza category as well, so that because we just like pizza, so that gives us a little bit of fun money. However, these depend on which baby step you're in. When we were in baby step 1, and even when we were just getting started, we only had a grocery budget, and if we wanted to get pizza, we would pull money from our grocery budget to go get a pizza, and that would be it. But if we ran out of grocery money, then we were done. We were it. That way we couldn't buy any more food. So you have to be mindful of which step you're on and which areas it makes sense to add a little bit to in your budget, but you want to make sure that covering your food is #1 and that food is really covered by groceries and by grocery shopping, not by running out to restaurants. So this brings us to our second wall, which is shelter. So your shelter includes either a rent if you're renting an apartment or a house, or your mortgage if you own your home. Now within this category is where we start to see kind of a breakup between stuffing cash envelopes or using sinking funds. Now for us, we pay rent obviously every month. And so that is something that is not necessarily a cash envelope item, it's just something that we write a check for. If yours is like auto-debited from your account, that's just a budget line item that you would put into your budget. But there's also other costs involved with your living space. So things like utilities are also included in covering your shelter. So you want to make sure you have line items for your utilities for each different one. So if you have water, sewer, garbage, gas, electricity, what else? Even cable, it would be included in your utilities, at least we include it in ours. However, we don't pay very much for cable, and here is where you can adjust your budget to meet your needs if you're again in those beginning baby steps. So as far as covering your shelter goes, you want to make sure that your utilities are as minimal as possible. If you're involved in, I don't know, any special like programs or something, you want to cut those out and make sure that you're paying as little as possible for your utilities, and that includes cutting the cable. What we did is we cut cable, we just have our internet service, and then we have a Hulu, which is a streaming service. So we have those two things, and they're much, much cheaper than it was to pay for a big old cable package. I remember when we first were in an apartment before we even begun like Dave Ramsey Journey or anything like that, we were paying well over $100, like $130, $140 for a cable package each month, and that is just like mind-blowing. It just, I can't even, like, it's crazy. So now we just pay for internet, and then we add in the Hulu streaming package as well, and that covers our needs. I mean, we don't need to be watching that much TV, so we don't need 100 channels or whatever comes on cable anyway. So that is one way to cut down on your expenses within the shelter category, because shelter does include utilities. Another thing that you want to make sure you cover in shelter is any increase that you might have in rent or your taxes for your mortgage or your property taxes. So what we do for this is we create a sinking fund, and we have a sinking fund for rent increase because we know we'll be hit at least once a year, basically once every lease renewal, with a rent increase. And so we started this about a year and a half ago, making this fund because we were out of baby step 1, we had our $1,000 saved up, and so we had a little bit of wiggle room to play with and to create some funds that we knew would benefit us and would help to cushion us and cushion our four walls. Now, I will say that when we had a rent increase previously, when we just begun our Dave Ramsey journey, we had a rent increase and it was a lot. If we'd had a rent increase fund at that time, it would have been easy to absorb that cost and those changes. Because we didn't have that, we ended up deciding to move. Just, it worked out better for us. But again, that was a very expensive choice also. So you want to make sure you have a buffer. If you are planning to move, also build in a buffer for that as well, because moves are quite costly. So add those things into your shelter expense and divide that out over however much time you have, however many months you're looking at before you're going to make either that rent increase or that move for your family, so that you are able to budget an amount that makes sense for your family to cover those costs without it hurting your monthly budget. So the third wall we're going to talk about is transportation. And transportation, again, has a couple of different funds that we use each month. Now for us, we do have cars. If you use public transportation, that would obviously be within this fund also. So since we have cars, we have to cover things like gas. It varies a little bit each and every month. So we just have a large gas category, and we use our debit card for this. You could certainly use cash for that if that works better for you. I tend to pump like either early in the morning or in the evening when I get off work, and I just wasn't comfortable carrying cash for that, so we use a debit card. It's just easier for us. But we track that each and every month, as you guys have seen in our monthly budget updates, where we have a category or a line item for how much we spend in gas for the month. So we were able to track that and keep under our budget for gas. So that is basically our cash or debit card category. But as far as transportation goes, we also have two other categories, and you can have quite a few other categories as well. But the two that we have right now are car maintenance, because you'll have to get oil changes, you'll have to get new tires at some point, you'll have to do work on your car to make sure it's in good condition to keep running for you. And the other is car registration. Because we have to register our cars each and every year, we know that this is a fixed, not income, we know that this is a fixed fee that we have to pay each and every year, and so we want to budget for that. There could be some wiggle room if you need to get a smog, which we have to do every few years, I believe. So you want to add a little bit of a cushion in for that as well. But what we did is we just looked at the amount that we paid for registration for both of our cars, and we made a fund for that. And then we divided that amount by the number of months that we had until we had to pay that registration fee. And then every year it just renews pretty much. So we put in the same amount into these funds each and every month, and each year it will be large enough by the time we have to pay registration in order to register our cars without affecting our monthly budget. So those are two categories that we have that we use sinking funds for to make sure those funds are covered. So because they're not an expense that we incur every month, it's something that we plan for and plan in advance to have and to have the cash for, so we don't have to use credit cards or have a little bit of a dramatic situation that happened. Alright guys, and our final 4 wall is clothing. This is not one that is talked about very often, but basic clothing is a part of your 4 walls. You obviously can't go to work with clothes that have holes in them. You don't want to send your kids to school with clothes that are like falling apart or 2 sizes too small for them, or shoes that don't fit, or things like that. So covering basic clothing is a part of your 4 walls. What we do, since we don't have to purchase clothing every month, we have a sinking fund dedicated to clothing. So every month we put money into the sinking fund, and when we need to purchase clothing, we just pull from that fund and cover our basic necessities for our clothing. Now, you can have certainly more funds, you can have a larger fund, you could have this be a monthly cash envelope item if that's something that works for you or that you need. I would say if you have younger kids, that's probably more of a necessity than where we are. We have a teenager, and he pretty much wears the same clothes year round, and then same thing for my husband and I, so we don't have many clothing needs. So when we do have a clothing need that comes up, we just pull from the sinking fund, pay for whatever the item is, and we're good to go. Now, we do have a couple of other areas where we've come up with times where we need to buy clothing, but those are covered in different sinking funds. For instance, weddings that we're in this year, I needed to buy a dress for one, my husband needed to buy a suit to cover a couple weddings, and so those came from wedding funds. So those are clothing, but they're very specific to a specific sinking fund and a specific purpose. So that came from a different fund than our clothing general fund did. So guys, I hope that was helpful. These are just a few ways that you can really make sure your 4 walls are covered in building your budget and making sure that you have your necessities taken care of before you move on to anything else in your budget. So once your bills are taken care of, then you want to move on to paying things like your credit card bills or any consumer debt that you have, paying off your mortgage early, different things like that. Whichever baby step you're in, you would go ahead and take care of those things after your 4 walls and your bills are taken care of. I would love to know which 4 wall category is the most important one for your family and how you guys fund that or plan for that each month. Be sure to leave it in a comment below and let me know how you do that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you very soon. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so that you can join us for the next video. Have a great Monday, friends, and I'll see you soon.